I've got a Bandit on my 6.
Snake Eyes turns in his cockpit, craning his neck, blinking through his goggles against the glare of the sun and peering beyond the twin wings of his flimsy warbird. The howl of the wind intensifies, numbing his skin. Gadget is right. Above him and to the right, one of the Dominion warbirds has got behind her and is clinging doggedly to her tail, arcanic repeaters spitting trails of purple, crackling energy after her. It is only a matter of time before they connect with her aircraft. That's not all he has to worry about, though. His team, Blue Flight, had been on a routine reconnaissance, nothing more than a spotter mission. The last thing they had expected to encounter, way out here in open void, had been a squad of enemy fighters. "Hang in there, Gadget," he calls back over the warbird's sending stone. "Backfire and I have got our own hostiles. We'll be with you ASAP." Snake Eyes pulls back hard on the throttle, climbing sharply into the clear blue sky and banking left, rising above the Dominion fighter's wide turn. Even over the wind he can hear the protesting creak of wood and canvas as he pushes his warbird to the limit of her capabilities. He hits the apex of his climb and then, with the added benefit of gravity at his back, comes swooping down at speed, anticipating his target's wide, banking turn, tucking in right behind him. "Here's a little present from the League of Free States," he growls, as his heavy repeaters whine into life. Hello and welcome to The Lone Adventurer, an actual play solo RPG podcast with me, Carl White. I will be your narrator, your game master, and your guide as we follow our heroes on their journey into the unknown. For this game, I will be using the Warbirds rule set, as well as a variety of other systems, tools, and tables as they take my fancy. A word of warning. The following scenes may contain mature themes and disturbing imagery. Listener discretion is advised. Adventure continues. Last time on The Lone Adventurer, Lynn Vale sacrificed herself in order that her sister, Mara, along with Tatters, might live. The two survivors, shattered by this devastating turn of events, found refuge in a secluded corner of Hammerhold and planned their revenge. Even if it meant their deaths, they were going to bring about the end to this mad, genocidal plan of the Voice of the Machine and the ring that they believe controls him. Meanwhile, out in the heart of the Void Sea, a second Doomspire has started to activate. Rapid-fire bolts of arcanicity burst from twin repeaters, each mounted beneath the Warbird's light wooden fuselage. At this range, Snake Eyes can't miss. His weapon fire tears into the Dominion fighter, cutting through the fabric of the Warbird's tail and wings like piss through snow. Clearly, one of the bolts hits the ICE because thick, black smoke erupts from the aircraft's rear. With his engine compromised and half his tail blown off, the enemy pilot seems to be struggling just to keep his bird in the air. The ICE is at the heart of the nascent Warbird technology, and the innovation that has, in only the last few years, enabled heavier-than-air flight. The power that the infernal combustion engine produces is caused by a rapid series of tiny, controlled infernal powder explosions that generate a force sufficient to propel light, aerodynamic aircraft through the skies above the Void Sea. It had been a completely accidental and lucky break that the League, a year or so earlier, had managed to infiltrate and capture a Dominion Warbird drop carrier, and from there had begun to reverse engineer Dominion's cutting-edge advance in aerial technology. In this new arms race, the Dominion had favoured mass-produced quantity, while the League, out of necessity, had focused on quality and customization. Even so, the prevalence of warbirds in the field remains very limited on both sides, and the frequency of such dogfights has been, to date, vanishingly rare. With his threat neutralized, Snake Eyes pulls up and checks in with the team. "Backfire, how's it hanging, buddy?" he calls out, though he has little doubt the big Urian is taking matters firmly in hand. Sure enough, when his SS crackles into life, the voice at the other end is confident, to the point of arrogance.
"You don't worry about me, boss. Save concern for the poor bastard in my sights."
Backfire opens up, but his target breaks left an instant before he fires, exposing himself to Backfire's arcanic cannon for only the barest instant before he's passed out of the crosshairs. Backfire's shots fly wide, eliciting a salty curse from the Urian. Gadget, meanwhile, drops into a near-vertical dive, her modded front-mounted bubble cockpit providing her a degree of protection from the powerful G-force exerted upon her. As she hurtles downwards towards the rolling surface of the void sea, her engine whines in protest, increasing rapidly in pitch. Her attacker can't match her, and his guns spray ineffective fire in her wake. Snake Eyes nods in approval. As planned, pulling her pursuer into that dive has given him the opportunity he needs to loop up and behind the less manoeuvrable Dominion aircraft. His guns bark, and once more a plume of smoke erupts from the Bandit's rear. The Dominion pilot, in a panic, breaks off his pursuit and attempts to climb out of danger, but Gadget has been waiting for exactly this moment. She pulls sharply out of her dive and is on the Bandit's tail in an instant. Light repeaters flare, and wood and canvas are torn apart. The enemy warbird levels off, barely able to fly straight.
"Leave him,"
Snake Eyes orders.
"Target the one on Backfire."
"Right you are, Skipper."
Gadget comes back. Backfire is having none of it.
"I need no help,"
he protests.
"This Grundats will rue the day he crossed paths with Backfire."
This Grundats, however, appears to have other ideas. Taking advantage of his opponent's overconfidence, he drops beneath the slower, heavier plane and opens fire. Backfire barrel rolls, corkscrewing down in a desperate attempt to evade the blasts of arcanicity that crackle past close enough to warm his face, passing between his warbird's wings mere inches from the supporting struts. But talented as he is, it's all up for the Dominion pilot. Snake Eyes and Gadget are on his tail, and their combined fire tears into his fragile craft. In his attempt to evade them, he exposes himself to Backfire's threat, who drops behind him and opens up with his cannons, leaving his opponent trailing smoke.
"Do not pursue,"
Snake Eyes sends to his team.
"Break off and form up on me." "What do you mean, do not pursue?"
Backfire fumes.
"Those dirty Dominion dogs deserve a good long bath in the void."
Despite his protestations, he complies with the order.
"It means, you great lummox, that if there were fighters out there, they'd probably come from a nearby drop carrier.
Gadget fires back.
And if there's a drop carrier, there may be bombers too."
Snake Eyes checks his powder reserves, makes a brief mental calculation, and then comes to a decision.
"We need to head back to the Pelicus, inform them what we found, and refuel. We're on a reconnaissance mission after all, and Captain Cavelian will flay us alive if we just go off glory hunting without informing him. But after that..."
He grins into the wind, a fierce thrill rising in his gut.
"After that, Blue Flight are going hunting."
The astute and perceptive listener may have noticed a subtle shift in protagonist, location, and theme in this chapter. We have seemingly abandoned Tatters and Mara, last seen prowling the Hammerhold, grieving the loss of Lynn, preparing for a fight that may well result in their deaths. Instead, we have travelled halfway across the chained world to involve ourselves in an Arcana-powered dogfight between the Magitech equivalent of World War I fighter planes. What the hell, the reasonable listener might be forgiven for asking, is going on? Is this the result of some crazy curveball tossed at me by my dastardly Mythic GM emulator? Well, for once, no. This time, Mythic is blameless, and this is all on me. I, and I alone, have made this decision to switch perspectives. Let me explain my reasoning. Firstly, from a meta perspective, there is the matter of narrative pacing. In order to build a little tension ahead of a grand showdown with the voice of the machine, and given that my Hammerhold party were resting and preparing, now seemed like a suitable time to cut away and explore another story thread. Second, partly as a result of that settle-in move, I wanted the sensation of time passing for Tatters and Mara in the fiction. I could have just said, time passes, and then carried on, but I felt like cutting away would create that sensation better, both for me as a player and for you as a listener. Third, last time, as a result of the settle-in move, we rolled for advancement of the ominous forces in play, and saw that as a result of those rolls, the second Doomspire had woken up. That event gave me a natural link back to the Void Sea, and that seemed like an opportunity I shouldn't waste. Obviously, I could have switched back to Mina's point of view at this point, but something held me back. Fourth, I was curious about the League of Free States. We've heard about these guys several times over the course of the series, but we've never actually met them. I wanted to find out a little bit more about them, and this felt like a good opportunity. And lastly, and if I'm honest, most importantly by far, a while back I had a sudden, inexplicable hankering to play and narrate a dogfighting solo RPG. I have no idea where the idea came from. It just seemed like a fun thing to do, something I'd never tried before, and so I picked my moment, reverse-engineered all the justifications I just outlined a moment ago, and voila, I introduced you, Blueflight, from the League of Free States. Where will this new detour lead? How will it tie into the wider story? I've honestly got no idea. We're just going to have to wait and see. Anyhow, with my decision made, I needed a suitable RPG system to support this section of the story. You know me, I like to fit a suitable set of mechanics to the story I'm telling, and so with this in mind, I started searching for dogfighting role-playing games. There were, surprisingly, several to choose from the super crunchy and technical to the very, very simple. But the one that appealed to me most was a game called Warbirds by Outrider Studios. I created 3 pilots, I built their warbirds, and then threw them into a very simple encounter in order to learn the dogfighting rules. I'm not going to go into those rules here, but there are details of my roles, as well as a link to a Warbirds dogfighting tutorial in the show notes, if anyone is interested. There were also no solo mechanics at work in this scene. I simply created the starting setup, and then played through 3 rounds of aerial combat, and then created some narrative based on my dice rolls and what I knew of my 3 PCs. So, with our introductions complete, let's find out what fate has in store for Blueflight. Gadget, close on Blueflight leader's left, scans the horizon. Their rapid turnaround at their drop carrier, the FLS Pelicus, had been a testament both to the decisiveness of their captain, Corvellian, and to the efficiency of their turn crew. It is less than an hour since they landed, and they are already back out in the big blue. And luck has been on their side. Thanks to the relative air humidity, faint remnants of the smoke trails left by the wounded bandits have lingered, suspended like ghostly route markers pointing the way to their prey. Her eyes are drawn to 3 near imperceptible dots at the very limit of her visual range, and she flips open the SS link.
Snake Eyes, I have a visual. 2 o'clock, 3 bogies, estimated heading due north-northwest.
Almost immediately, the return link crackles into life. When it does, their team leader responds with his characteristic calm.
Roger that, Gadget. Blue flight, climb 1200, bark 1430. We'll come at them from out of the sun. Stay tight on me.
Not for the first time, she counts her blessings to be part of Blue Flight. An aircrew lives or dies by the quality of its leader, and Snake Eyes is one of the very best. As such, he has drilled them continuously, and their flight time together has honed Blue Flight into a tight unit. There is probably none more effective in all of Race Squadron, and, to date, nothing they have faced in the azure skies has come close to matching their skills. The rookie pilots the Dominions are pushing into their flying coffins are raw recruits by comparison, and the few aerial skirmishes Blue Flight have run into have been decisive victories.
More lambs to the slaughter,
Comes Backfire's voice over the comm, eager for battle. As they draw closer, they are starting to get a better idea of the enemy they face, and early signs are promising.
just a couple of freighters, along with a drop carrier.
Backfire adds.
Easy meat.
Gadget squints at their targets, hair whipping in the wind.
Are you sure about that, Backfire? That's one big old drop carrier by the look of it.
As they draw nearer, it becomes clear she is right. A standard deployment Dominion drop carrier typically carries a complement of 6 warbirds, but as they come into visual range, it becomes evident that this one is a fair bit bigger than the norm. It is not a fleet carrier, thank the 7. Those behemoths carry anything up to 36 planes, but if you run into one of those, the fighters will be the least of their problems. The few fleet carriers the Dominion has commissioned and deployed so far never take to the skies without a supporting battle fleet of escort frigates, cruisers, and battleships in tow, and are best given a very, very wide berth.
Nothing we can't handle.
And Gadget has to grin at the big man's bravado. He's not short on confidence, that's for sure.
Carrier's dropping her birds.
Comes Snake Eye's voice over the comm. Gadget curses. He's right. Below them, the enemy fighters are dropping, freefall from the carrier ship's open cargo bay doors. One after another, they plummet towards the cloud layer and activate their engines and swoop up and round their drop carrier like a swarm of angry hornets.
I count 9 birds in the air. Damn it, how did they spot us? Looks like your easy meat just got a damn sight tougher, Backfire.
One of the many pleasures of solo RPGs is the ability to pick up and drop story threads as they take your fancy. Unlike a group game, where everyone has a character they are invested in, and a game system they have all agreed to play, in a solo game you are blessed with players who are delighted to switch characters and systems whenever you say so, and who never give you any scheduling headaches, because they are all you. The only social contract you need to honour is with yourself. That means that a lot of the assumptions of a group game can be questioned when you play solo. You can jump at will between game systems, characters, and geographical locations with comparative ease. If it suits your purpose, you can jump between time periods or even alternate versions of reality. Whatever feels like it's in service to the story you're experiencing, the world you're exploring, and whatever feels like fun. And I use that term experiencing quite deliberately. In the same way that it can be difficult to explain RPGs to a non-RPG player, it can be very difficult to explain solo RPGs to someone who has only experienced group play. One of the most common responses that illustrates this difficulty is one of many variants on the dismissive statement, "Why bother playing a solo RPG? You might as well just write a book." There are a few things wrong with this statement, the first being the inference that writing a book is a bad thing, but the most significant error here is that playing a solo RPG really is nothing like writing a book. Trust me, I've written a book, at least an incomplete and unpublished one, and while it shares some commonalities, playing a solo RPG is not the same. If anything, although in my case there is undeniably writing involved, playing a solo RPG actually feels far more like reading a book, or perhaps watching a movie, only you are deeply immersed and participatory in the action, and you control the protagonist as they make their way through the world. That is a magical feeling, one that is adjacent to playing in a group game, but also quite different. In Sarah Moss's novel, The Tidal Zone, she writes, "You think you want a story, and you think you want an ending, but you don't. You want life. You want disorder, and ignorance, and uncertainty." That is what I get when I play a solo RPG, that feeling of stepping into another life and experiencing all of that uncertainty and ignorance and sharing the revelations, small and large, right by their side as their world unfurls before them. One of those small revelations in this scene was what Blueflight would find when they tracked down their enemy. They might have found nothing at all. They might have found an entire enemy fleet, or something else entirely, or anything in between. But what they've actually found is a large drop carrier, providing a fighter escort for a couple of freighters. The presence of a rare and valuable drop carrier alongside a pair of common or garden freighters seems slightly overkill to me. Let's see if we can find out what warrants that level of protection.
Nothing they can't handle,
Backfire repeats, though there is rather less joviality in his voice this time around. If he were honest with himself, he'd admit to a spike of ice-cold fear piercing his guts, but the one thing Gustav is not is honest with himself. He forces a nonchalance back into his voice.
On your word, boss.
Hold, Blues.
Snake Eyes comes back.
I don't think they saw us. Maintain altitude and approach. Ready to break off on my mark.
You don't think they saw us? Then why did they scramble?
The Urian is incredulous.
If we don't attack now, we lose advantage.
It is Gadget who responds with her usual irreverence.
Put a sock in here, big guy. Look, they're not scrambling for us.
She's right. Ahead of the Dominion convoy, a small, sleek ship of unusual design and with unfamiliar markings has burst from the cloud layer, trailing swirling vapor in her wake. The pursuing fighter squad form up above her, ready to attack. Backfire whistles. He has heard of ships risking sustained flight within the toxic, corrosive clouds of the buoyant sea, but he has never actually seen one do it with his own eyes. Whoever is piloting that little airship must be mad, desperate, or, more likely, both. Snake Eye's voice comes back on the comm.
A lot of hostiles down there, Blues. More than we've ever tackled alone. Looks like we're going to have to abort. Whoever that is they're after, I'm afraid I'm not risking Blueflight to them. They're on their own.
Gustav feels relief flooding from him at the thought of not engaging the enemy, but his mouth, as usual, is not on the same page.
Abort? We cannot abort, boss. They are distracted, easy pickings, and both of that little ship. We cannot abandon them to the Dominion dogs.
There is a long pause, and Gustav has the distinct impression that Snake Eyes is wrestling with his decision. The flight leader's voice, though, when he comes back on the comm, is resolute.
I'm afraid it's not our fight, Backfire. And engaging with so much larger an enemy force is just too great a risk. We wait for them to commit to attack, then we turn back. Acknowledge Blueflight.
Gustav is torn. Every physical instinct is screaming at him to turn and run, but there is some tiny, stubborn part of him that cannot bear the thought of backing down. He grinds his teeth and notices that Gadget is equally silent. There is a sudden burst of static from all three of Blueflight's sending stones, and then an unknown voice comes over the comm.
Unidentified craft, this is Dead Reckoning. If you are with the Legion Print States, help me, I really hope you are.
The voice tails off, and Gustav stares at his instrument panel in disbelief. How has that ship accessed their comms? How did he even know they were here? The comm crackles back into life.
Unidentified aircraft, this is the Montessario of the Kairos House of Montessario. We are carrying information utterly critical, I repeat, critical for the survival of the League, and I request immediate political asylum. Please respond.
Then, one by one, like predators closing in on an easy kill, the circling pack of Dominion warbirds starts their dive for their ship. Their guns rain down hell. What was I saying about experiencing revelation as the world unfurls? This scene, as with so many others, was completely transformed by the intervention of my mythic GM. I started this scene as normal, with a very moderate chaos factor of 5, and decided that this scene would be contact with the enemy and a nice big dogfight. I rolled, as usual, for a scene test, and here is what Mythic, like butter wouldn't melt in its mouth, had to say for itself.
The scene is altered. Add a new character.
I stared at that response for a good long while, I don't mind telling you. Disbelief at my GM emulator's uncanny knack for weaving story threads together mingled with a flurry of questions. What does this mean for my story? For the remainder of this season? How, after all this time, does my GME still have the capacity to blow my tiny mind?
It's really not that hard.
Shut up, Mythic. There was really only one possible interpretation of that scene alteration, and the mental dominoes started inexorably toppling. The possibility of entirely new story directions appeared before me, tantalizing with a new potential. Where might they lead? And all this from one simple random prompt. So, Mina is back. Of course, I thought it might be a possibility at some point, given we were out in the void sea. But for it to happen so soon just seems uncanny. I'm starting to think that my GME is developing some sort of weird sentience.
Nothing weird about it.
Are you sure about that?
Absolutely.
Anyway, this leaves us in a very interesting spot. The Dead Reckoning, it turns out, is being pursued by a small fleet of ships and is about to come under attack by a near-full squad of warbirds. We have to assume, if Mina's broken cloud cover, that her shields have reached their limits and failed, which means she's even more vulnerable. All that stands between her and total oblivion are 3 League warbirds, whose leader has just instructed them to leave her to her fate, along with the hope that her desperate plea for aid will sway them to her cause. I can't wait to find out what happens. I have one huge thank you to include this week. Appearing as the voice of Mythic, the GM emulator, is the inimitable Simon Williams, creator of the fabulous solo RPG podcast Legend of the Bones. If you've not had a chance to listen to Legend of the Bones yet, then I envy you. You have a treat for the ears in store. Legend of the Bones marries the simplicity and lethality of old-school D&D with Simon's flair for deep characterization and evocative storytelling, creating something truly unique. It is compelling listening, and I heartily recommend it. I've included a link in the show notes. So, thank you, Simon. Mythic has never felt more alive. I look forward to finding out what new surprises it has in store for me next time. You have been listening to The Lone Adventurer, a solo RPG podcast played, written and performed by me, Carl White. If you've enjoyed this episode, please consider telling your friends about it, or leaving a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. It really is a huge help. You can follow me on BlueSky at theloneadventurer.bsky.social. Email me at theloneadv@gmail.com or follow my blog at carlillustration.wordpress.com. You can find show notes for this episode and all others at theloneadventurer.podbean.com, where I include any links mentioned in the episode, as well as mechanics information. I also include a link to a full episode transcript. The story will continue in the next episode of The Lone Adventurer. Thank you for listening.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.